Namaste. So today we take the last, this is the last talk on the synthesis of yoga series. It's like a summary and overview. So as we know that the live divine and the synthesis of yoga form one particular set. The live divine gives the metaphysical basis of the yoga, but this metaphysics is based on Sri Aurobindo's own direct experiences. So the logical reasoning proceeds from experience rather than logical reasoning building up a conclusion. So there is a difference between the two. So though that is a work of philosophy, it is the approach is, as in Indian tradition, what darshan literally means, a thing seen. And the synthesis of yoga gives us the practical foundations. It gives us the foundations for the practice of yoga. But there is enough in this which we can take it as a carry home point with regard to the practice. So he elaborates each and every practice which is fundamental to this yoga. It's also good to remember with regard to the practice that these works have been written before 1921, and while the Life Divine was extensively revised, which went right up to post Second World War, the synthesis of yoga was not really revised extensively. And Sri Aurobindo was not keen to do so. One reason why he said is that, it was written, though he had the experience, but he had come down to the higher mind to write all this, and he didn't want to do that again. And second reason is the yoga slightly changed in the sense that with the coming of the Divine Mother, the yoga was centered now around the Divine Mother. We see the mention of the Divine Mother in the synthesis, but it is more as the Divine Shakti. And we have seen it's the same aspects which is described in the Mother, but there is a little difference. So with the embodiment of the Divine Mother, it became a lot more simple. And the charge of the yoga for us, all of us, was handed over to the Mother. So if one wants to understand the yoga and its practice, eventually it is what the Mother has spoken about it. So it's the same thing. It's not that this becomes meaningless. No, it's the same thing, but she fills in all the little dots and blanks which may be left in the mind of the seeker. The third thing which happened is that, there are plenty of letters of Sri Aurobindo written to disciples which cover up the yoga from every aspect, which includes both metaphysical as well as practical. So this one must always remember when one reads this. This is a wonderful book, very inspiring, very uplifting, and itself, my own feeling is, my own experience rather, reading this book is doing yoga. So with this background, we can quickly go through the main contents. As we know, there are 4 parts of the book, but there is a introduction in the beginning which makes it 5 parts. But this introduction is not given a part like that. So in the introduction, we have 5 chapters. And this deals with the conditions of the synthesis. He has used the word the synthesis of yoga, and people are likely to believe, so many people still believe, that the synthesis of yoga means there are different yogic systems and he has combined them, little bit of meditation, little bit of pranayam, little bit of hatha yoga, little bit of bhakti yoga, little bit of karma yoga, and put them together, a little bit of Raj yoga, and you have the synthesis of yoga. Well, that's not so. Sri Aurobindo makes it very clear. First of all, that's impractical because each of these yoga systems which are specialized demand a total commitment. And some of these systems demand such a commitment, like Hatha Yoga, proper Hatha Yoga, that it's nearly impossible to do it faithfully even in one lifetime. So to combine these practices successively or simultaneously is not what is meant by the synthesis. So what is meant by the synthesis, number one, it takes up the essence of all these yoga. So very often when the reader reads Sri Aurobindo from here and there passingly, he is likely to feel that, this is the same as yoga of the Gita, depending on the portions. But that's not true, because the yoga of the Gita is there, but it is not the yoga of the Gita. It's not synonymous with that. Or he may feel, this is one of the Vedantic yogas. Or he may feel this is Bhakti yoga, or Karma yoga, or Raj yoga, or Gyan yoga. But Well, something of all these yogas is there in it. But there is something else, something more which changes its very character and its eventual goal. So, this is the basic thing. And the goal of this yoga, again, Shobinda makes clear. Today only somebody was telling me, well, there are different paths, they all lead to the same goal. Well, not quite so. Even in traditional paths, it doesn't lead to the same goal unless we say in general that it leads to some kind of a God experience. Well, that's okay. We can discover the divine even in nature, but the divine is infinite, and depending on the angle of vision, we have an experience or a realization. And we may well say that this is what the divine is, and this is the path, and this is the experience. That's how cults are formed. But Sri Aurobindo takes us to another level altogether. All these experiences are synthesized in a very harmonious and a beautiful manner. Just as in God, there are no parts that this is Karma Yoga, this is Bhakti Yoga, but the divine acts in the world with the freedom of infinity. So in this yoga, it is not this aspect, that aspect. All aspects are there of the divine. But then all of them are not combined as this or that, but in a beautiful harmonious synthesis. Like a human being is an organic whole. We can't say this is the hand, this is the leg, this is a way of saying. But when we refer to the human being, we refer to a totality. A human being is hands plus feet plus heart plus brain and whatever else. But there is something about the human being which puts them together, and that's what makes a human being. The same thing is true of God and God realizations. And finally, in this synthesis, Sri Aurobindo combines the divine realization, the highest divine possibility of realizing the divine, and this matter and material existence, this worldly life, this earthly life. So it is not about abandoning this earthly life, not escaping from this world, but integrating it with the highest consciousness. In other words, a change of consciousness, a transformation of consciousness, and along with that, a completely new way of living life. And what that new way is, of course, he reveals over a course of time, and that is something to be discovered by each one. Finally, he points out in this particular set of essays that while generally when we use the word yoga, we talk about Vedantic systems. But even in India, there is not much talk about Tantra. Tantra has fallen into disrepute because of the Vamarg and, excesses, which, well, that's a different story altogether. But Tantra was one of the ways that the yogis tried to synthesize nature and God. So behind nature, they saw cosmic powers, and these cosmic powers ascended in a hierarchy toward the ultimate truth. So they took a different route where nature was neither strangled, not stifled, not just put into kind of sattvic purity, but they tried to explore all the deeper possibilities of nature, and then they went up to the supreme. The goal was mukti, but through a different route. So in this yoga, we find a synthesis even of Vedanta and Tantra, as Sri Aurobindo put it later on, through the method of Vedanta to the goal of Tantra. So Tantra is about enjoyment, but a divine enjoyment, not a human enjoyment. So he puts these four in this yoga, Shuddhi and Mukti, which is about Vedantic yoga. And then he speaks about Siddhi and Bhukti. Siddhi is the perfection, and Bhukti is the enjoyment part. But not a human enjoyment, but a divine enjoyment. Then in part 1, which is the Yoga of Divine Works, chapter 1, the 4 8s is a must read for those who want to understand what are the main elements of this yoga in terms of what can help us move towards this wonderful or enter this wonderful mighty river or an ocean into which we are plunged. So he speaks primarily about, in every yoga actually it is there. There is the Shastra. Shastra tells us what the yoga is about, how to do it. Both these things are there in the Shastra. And then the Guru. In every yoga there is the Guru, the teacher, the master who will tell us about the yoga. And then in every yoga there is that element of the disciple. We may have the master, we may have the book, but yet if the disciple is not really interested, not sincere, there is no yoga. As Sri Aurobindo says, merely living in the ashram is not enough. The other day that thing was circulating. One may live in the ashram, one may even read the books, which is a preparation. One may even some level acknowledge that, okay, Sri Aurobindo is my master or guru, but yet one may not practice the yoga. So yoga has to be lived and put into practice. So the utsaha of the disciple, and finally he speaks about time, because time is the cosmic manager. So it is time that shuffles everything within and outside until everything is ready. So if we can take it like this, that inwardly one has decided that I'll go to Mansarovar Yatra. So if you persist with this thought, you will find out ways and means. You will eventually go through your own endurance test. You will go through the medical thing required. You will arrange money. Then you will pay the money. Then you will take the journey. So, but why? Because you had this plan. So everything begins to take us towards that. So the purpose of time, the work of time is a trustee of the divine. So all our aspiration goes into the big hundi khata of time. The time notes it, okay, it's aspiring. Then one day the divine sanctions. Done. Now time as the cosmic manager has to manipulate everything, and that can turn the life topsy-turvy even. That's what he describes in the 4.8, that the way of the divine dealing with us, humanity, is not the way the human ego wants it. Human ego wants pleasure and comfort zones. Well, if one follows that, then one may well land up with a miracle-doing master. And in fact, he says that dazzling, misleading lights, which is very dangerous. So then he reveals to us the master is within us, the Shastra is within us, the Veda is within us. But when we read the external Shastra, it opens at some point the door. And then we discover the Veda, the secret knowledge which is there in creation. The door opens, then knowledge begins to pour in. So too, the masters, Sri Aurobindo and the mother, first we turn toward them externally, and then a time comes when we discover them within us. That's why Sri Aurobindo uses the word presence. So what is a presence? People ask. Presence is one way to define it is formless form. So it is the form that the divine takes within us, and yet he is formless. It can take different form depending upon our own approach. So, and then of course for the disciple, he must learn to wait in patience. He must develop certain qualities. So these are the main ingredients of the 4.8. And then follow a number of chapters, of which there are some key practices. One key practice is self-consecration. To consecrate is a very interesting thing. It's a word. So one example that comes to the mind is that in old times, people took things to the king. And the king opens the cover. You take some food, eateries and all. Then the king looks at it, touches it, and then he distributed to the whole praja. Sri Aurobindo has used the word like Nazrana. It's an interesting word, Nazrana. He has seen it, Nazar. So like earlier during Sri Aurobindo's birthday, 1913, Amrita describes, so everybody will sit with banana leaf and rice will be given, other things will be poured. Then Sri Aurobindo would come, stand before each one and look into the plate. Now it becomes prasad. So consecration is precisely that. Whatever we are doing, when we first offer it to the divine, please look into it, please see into it, then it becomes prasad. Then it becomes purified, sanctified. Literally it means sanctified. So even when we are doing things for the ego, yet because it has been sanctified, it begins to take a new turn. It begins to change us within. Of course, the consecration has to develop to a point where all we do is no more for the ego. We expel this ego-turned consciousness and turn everything to the divine, to live for the sake of the divine, by the divine, to belong to the divine. That is the goal of self-consecration. And then he emphasizes, he so beautifully Sri Aurobindo summarizes the way of the Gita, self-surrender in works. Again, consecration developed, perfected, becomes surrender. So we have these three terms: offering. Offering is in general, we offer things to the divine, whatever we are doing. Then it becomes consecration, something more sanctified, where we give it to the divine and say, whatever you want to do with it, you do. And then surrender, where completely we have entrusted, whether surrender means now I obey you. You may give me pleasant results, painful results, happy things, sorrowful things. I receive them all as your gifts. So offering perfected becomes consecration, consecration perfected becomes surrender. And then we have the sacrifice, which is straight from the Gita, yajna. So sacrifice is to put things, all our movements and activities in the purifying fire. And this fire is the psychic fire, he reveals here. So anyways, we all live life of sacrifice. People sacrifice to start with for the ego. Somebody wants to fulfill ambition. So there are a lot of things we sacrifice. But for the sake of the ego, that's a ashuddha sacrifice. It bears very limited results. Then we sacrifice for the family. So even that is because it keeps us tied to the ignorance. Then there is sacrifice done with the motive of maybe some material rewards. As the Gita says, this sacrifice also keeps us tied to the lower creation. It doesn't free us. And finally, there is the sacrifice which is done to the divine. So everything must be put into this psychic flame with the divine name upon it. So remember and offer. And then when we do this, all these activities get purified. What fire does? It refines and purifies, uplifts. So every activity, and there every activity means every activity, including the work we do, which is professional, personal, there is no such distinction. Daily work, even receiving gifts and giving gifts, taking a bath, shower, even mere ultimately respiration and heartbeat, everything should be sacrificed. And when we do that, this sacrifice is nothing to do with painful things. It is about, in fact, ennobling them. So sacrifice is not about giving oneself pain that, oh, I have to sacrifice this to the divine. Divine doesn't like this kind of a painful giving. Even a noble human being will not like it. If you give something and say, you know what, actually this, but I'm giving it to you. Any noble person will say, sir, please keep it with yourself. Thank you so much. So sacrifice has to be done as an act of joy. And what has to be removed, that he says are these band of enemies of the spirit, whose names are lust and anger and greed and fear and false attachment, moha, jealousies, possessiveness. These have to be removed. But otherwise, as he says, Krishna has to be fostered inside. We have to grow in joy, not in pain. So that's how he takes us through sacrifice, a number of chapters, and then as we continue with the sacrifice, we will see that slowly we begin to be moved by the divine will rather than the personal egoistic will, rather than by desires. So nishkam karma, expelling desire. When we expel desire, restlessness ceases. All restlessness comes from desire. And desire can be gross, for gross rewards, so subtle. Somebody should give a tap on the back. Say, wonderful. So all these desires have to be chased out. And everything done for the sake of the divine. So first thing is it brings peace and liberation. As a Jivan Mukta, without actually sitting in meditation, it can bring liberation. It does. At one place, the mother said to someone, I met that person, he used to teach hockey in the ashram school. So he showed me in letter, mother wrote. He said that how much time should I spend in meditation, work. He said, work done rightly, if you do the work rightly, it will make you progress 10 times more than meditation. I've actually seen that letter. 10 times more. Why? Because dynamically you are engaged. In meditation, especially when we are doing it like a blank, not dynamic meditation, it changes actually nothing. We feel nice peace zone inside, but we come out unchanged human being. So in this yoga, work becomes a dynamic meditation, if you want to put it like that. So he takes us through all this, and how through this royal grand trunk road of the path of works we can touch that point where the supermind, the divine consciousness, the omniscience, omnipresence of the divine, omnipotence of the divine takes up all the works, and then the person is not even an instrument or a channel, but simply a mode of manifestation of the divine. So this is how he beautifully, this first part, which is about the yoga of divine works. Then there is the yoga of integral knowledge, and uses the word integral knowledge in the sense that merely knowledge of self-knowledge, self-realization of God who is transcendent is not enough. We have to realize God in every activity, in the cosmos, in the individual, in the entire creation. So it's an integral knowledge. And for that, we have to start by purifying the understanding. Our understanding is right now clogged by many things, hundreds of preconceived notions, even about yoga. One reason why people find difficult to understand Sri Aurobindo. Other day, there was a very interesting discussion. So they were saying that this museum I was talking about. So for when we talk about yoga, what image should we depict? Should we make somebody sitting in meditation or this way? I said, none of this. So what image should come? I said, a potter hand which is inside a pot and shaping the pot. I said, see how many things. Pot is the human vessel that is being shaped. Second, it is in work, which is not big or small. Third is, it's the hand is the divine, and we are the pot which is being shaped. So I said, in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, because it is about divine perfection. So this will much more depict the real dynamics of the yoga than sitting in meditation or standing on 1 feet or 2 feet or 3 feet, whatever it be. So this is how, this is a very different kind of a yoga. But first thing is to purify the understanding. Otherwise, the moment we talk about yoga, we think about meditation. The moment we talk about meditation, even that we have preconceived notions. Because unfortunately, we have read too many books. Like somebody once asked me that, in Kundalini, there is a snake which is 2.5 feet. I said, no, sir, it can lengthen to more than 5 feet. Now, this is a true experience, but it's not it's not literally a snake. You actually experience the whole thing, but that's a different story. So, understanding must be cleared of all these intrusions from preconceived ideas, opinions, notions, viewpoints, even emotional interference, etc., etc. Then only true understanding can come. And then the two main elements of the yoga of knowledge is concentration. Concentration upon the idea helps us to realize the truth of the idea. And the best idea to meditate or concentrate upon in Sri Aurobindo's yoga is the divine is in all is in the divine, and the divine is the all. So if we do that, even few minutes of this concentration is literally mind-blowing. Okay, then renunciation. Again, renunciation is not outward. It's not sannyasa, but tyaga in the Gita. So renunciation is a very inner thing. So Sri Ram and Sri Krishna are renunciates. But look at what kind of renunciates. They are both kings, they fight the battle. And Sri Aurobindo gives their example. That very often we say that we have renounced, and we very subtly don a garb which appears holy in the eyes of others. Because now when you wear a certain color garb, it attracts attention. So he says it's such a subtle thing. In this yoga, all show and sham have to go. The value is not what people give us, but what the divine knows, and he knows us in the heart. It's not what people gave and the show and sham, all this has to go. So when he speaks about renunciation, it's again the ego sense and the desire which have to be renounced thoroughly. 3 gunas in which we are tied, they have to be renounced. Then only one goes into that state which the Gita speaks about, Trigunatit, Nistragun. And we cannot do it unless we open to a greater divine consciousness and ascend the higher planes of consciousness. All this he describes here in the yoga of integral knowledge. And he describes how we can start with the release from subjection to the body. The mind should be able to master the body. It's not like, oh, I'm feeling very hungry, be done. Of course, one feels hungry, one eats. But one is not enslaved to the bodily needs. The needs are there, they have to be taken care of. It's not deliberately fasting. It's not missing on sleep, no. But one is the master. Whatever is the demand of the work, one engages in that. And then the release from the heart and the mind. We know that all these, our heart, the surface heart is especially full of jealousies and, possessiveness and all kinds of hatred, very strong emotions. I don't know whether to call them strong or weak, full of all kinds of excesses and violences. That has to be quietened so that a deeper soul of love can emerge. And then he speaks about release from the ego. With that comes the realization of the cosmic self. So here, this runs through 28 chapters, in which toward the end he touches upon Hatha Yoga, Raj Yoga, and Samadhi. So, of course, in this yoga, we don't follow that method, but he touches upon, because it's the synthesis of yoga. For instance, in Raj Yoga, or even in Hatha Yoga, pranayam, breath mastery is important. But in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it is achieved in a different way, simply by the pressure of the mental will moving in a certain direction. And but he says Samadhi again. Samadhi is to enter into higher planes by withdrawing from the outer waking consciousness. But in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, one should be able to be in contact with the higher planes without such a eye closure and withdrawal. They should open and pour through the human channel. So that's the difference. And then this beautiful 8 chapters of the Yoga of Divine Love, the shortest other than the introduction, but the most beautiful. And so here again, the emphasis is on forming relation with the Divine. So they are relations we form in our ignorance, but they are very helpful. One such relation is of prayer. And then there are relations which we form as we take to yoga. So prayer and worship, Bahya Puja, they are a way of forming relation with the Divine. But it is when we are still in ignorance. As we move up, prayer is there, but it takes more and more the form of inner seeking for the Divine, love for the Divine, and in every which way. So in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it's not just guru and disciple. Sri Aurobindo has broken all those boundaries. He is not just the guru. Of course he is that. He is not just the teacher. Of course he is that. He is not just the master. Of course he is that. He is also the father and mother and leader of the human march. He is the hero warrior in whose banner we fight. He is the lover, the paramour, the beloved. Even the child born to our desires. That's how Sri Aurobindo brings it. So every possible relation we form with human beings can be formed with the Divine and must be formed with the Divine. That is how there is a complete nourishment. The highest of these relations is of the lover and beloved. So that comes very beautifully. And before that, as the mother. Because when we deal with the Divine or turn to the Divine as mother, then we get rid of all shame, guilt, everything. Mama knows us through and through. Mama will say, I know you. You don't have to try to hide and become a sadhu bacha. At the same time, Mama may slap us also. But Mama will pour love. Mama is somebody whom we can completely trust. She may scold us. See, this is the nature of mothers. She may scold us when we do something which we shouldn't do inside the house. But if somebody comes from outside, she will put us behind and defend us. So, the relation of with the Divine as mother is something very unique. Of course, there in Indian tradition, and Sri Aurobindo brings that out into the forefront, and we know in this yoga, that is the fundamental relation which we form with the Divine. The emphasis on that. And then the main elements of way of devotion is Smaran, Manan, Nididhyasan. So, the more we think about the Divine, the more I would add, read about the Divine. We call the Divine names. We remember the Divine. Meditate upon the Divine. The more love blossoms in the heart. So, this is the way in which Manan, Shravan is first, to hear the Divine. Like this one kind of Shravan. Manan, to think about the Divine. And then Nididhyasan, where we meditate upon the Divine. Call the Divine name, Smaran of the Divine. Darshan of the Divine. We want to see the Divine. And more then the image becomes more and more inward. It becomes inwardly visible to us. And when we take this route, then the big thing that door opens is of Anandam Brahman, which is the ultimate. So this is what he takes us, that this is the mystery, the delight of the Divine and the Divine personality. Naturally, if we believe in impersonal, this yoga is a No, because just like the yoga of the Gita, in this yoga, implicit is that beyond the personal and the impersonal, there is the supreme personality of the infinite, which is what the Gita also says, Purushottama, beyond Shar and Akshar. So somebody who believes only in the impersonality and feels, no, personal is only a way to reach the impersonal, then this is not the yoga. Because one will reach the impersonal, nothing wrong with that. But in this yoga, we take it what the Gita says, there is the personal, there is the impersonal, and beyond the personal and the impersonal. Actually, everything has a personal and impersonal side. Love is impersonal, but in a human being or anything in creation, it takes a personal form. Everything is at once impersonal, universal, as well as personal. So, personal and impersonal are not two opposites but two complementary aspects. But beyond the personal and the impersonal is the suprapersonal, infinite Godhead, the Purushottama, the Sachidanand, with whom one connects. So, this is what Sri Aurobindo reminds us, and Sri Aurobindo takes that as we see, surrender is there everywhere, dedicating everything to the divine. So, we cannot do all this if we take divine not as a being. But of course, his being is not a human being. Being doesn't mean wearing a beard and sitting with a rod and carrot stick. No. But being means he is fully aware of his existence. It's not just a mechanical law which is operating, but he is a self-conscious, Swambhu being who knows himself. And he knows himself not just up there, but he knows himself in the heart of every seeker. And he knows himself in the entire creation. You can't deceive him. He is not moved by our favors. Oh, this man is doing so much chadhava. No, you can't fool him. He is not fooled by our show of holiness. He will strip the mask and say, look here. Nor is it deceived by what people may call as this person is unholy. Today, one letter of the mother, where she says, do not listen to people's opinions. I don't go by their opinion. Because the person wrote, people are thinking that I am not a very nice person. Something like that. He said, I don't listen to these gossips and suggestions from people. I know you, and you are a wonderful worker. She writes that she knows what the disciple is. So all this comes, and then finally part 4, which is the yoga of self-perfection. And in this yoga, Sri Aurobindo tells us what really this perfection is, this word. Perfection is not just arranging things in order. That is order. It's important. Perfection is not even about organizing things very well. That is organization. So each word has a meaning. Order is good. It's nice to have things in an orderly way. When you arrange your cupboard well, we use the word perfection. It's not perfection, that's order. Very good. Organization. Things should be organized in such a way that there is smoothness of functioning as well as there is a plasticity. Very difficult to organize, but that's how the divine has organized the world. Or things should be organized in such a way that everything is in its right place. So organization is important. It's an aspect of Mahasaraswati. And then there is harmony, more difficult. But perfection is where we can put it like that. Everything that is human has to start with its divine absolute. Human love, animal love, Rakshasic love, Asuric love, love in the plant, love in the rocks, ultimately owes its origin to divine love. Human love is not automatically same as divine love. But that's how we mistake. Oh, God is so loving. Yes. So why did he create Kurukshetra? That is also an act of love. So we cannot understand the divine ways because you think, oh, he must be human love, very lovey-dovey creature sitting out there, and he'll say, oh my God, so sad, this is happening to you. No, he doesn't. He because of his love, he does what he does. Shri Krishna on the battlefield as dreadful Kali is nothing else but divine love hastening the evolution, liberating the likes of Duryodhana from the bodies in which their soul is cased. It's an act of love, tremendous act of love. Clearing the passage for a Dharma Rajya in India, at Aryavarth of that time. Rendering justice to the Pandavas. All this in one go. And with everyone it is an act of love. He, for a change after this event, he opens the eyes of Gandhari and Dhritarashtra. One is blinded by his ambition and passion, and the other by a kind of blind love that if I put a bandage over my eyes, I'll do better. How much better it would have been if she kept her eyes open, not only outer but inner, and cautioned her husband that, look here, these children are not going in the direction that they should go. So Shri Krishna, even to them it's a compassion. He helped them to open their eyes, and after their initial anger, we see that how their life changed. So this is the way the divine operates. In one action, there are many things involved, and always it is love. So each quality lifted. Similarly, knowledge is not about reading books or writing them. Knowledge is to have access to the higher states of consciousness where knowledge is found, or deep within where the Veda is secret in the heart of every creature. So too with work. So long as we think, I am the doer, we are far from even entering into Karma Yoga. But when we know nature is the doer, and behind nature it is the divine who is the doer, and the work belongs to the divine, its results belong to the divine, its initiating impulse should also be the divine and not my desires, then truly works are done. So automatically, otherwise people think if I am doing my duty, I am doing Karma Yoga. Duty is a human, mental, moral concept necessary in ignorance, but it is not synonymous as divine works. So this is how every aspect of our human life, and this are three main paths, but every aspect, love, knowledge, will, which comes in all these three. But even our gestures, postures, movements, every little gesture that we engage in has its absoluteness in the divine. When the divine smiles, when the divine embraces, it's very different from the human smile and the human embrace. When the divine holds the hand, divine even touches the feet. Look at Sri Krishna. He puts his head in Radha's lap. So every gesture, even the most mundane, when he eats in the house of Vidur, or when he prepares a meal, even when he does pranks, all of them have their divine truth. And to reclaim this divine truth is one part of perfection. And in that divine perfection, they must be in right proportion, right measure. Nothing exaggerated, out of proportion. And this divine perfection is never an individual phenomenon. Divine doesn't act only for myself. I am a perfect one. He is ever engaged in works to make this creation perfect. So divine perfection includes by its very nature an individual as well as cosmic fulfillment, and of course the transcendent. So this is the divine perfection which Shobinda speaks about. Less than that is the human perfection, which can be moral, which can be ethical, which can be religious, which can be secular. All these are nice things. They are evolutionary ladder. Or it can be very mundane. That okay, this person follows all the rules, files all the income tax return in time, is very honest, he is civilized, he follows all the, So, well, that is okay, but that is not divine perfection. It's not that divine perfection starts flaunting the rules. He doesn't do that. But this should not be mistaken for that. That is something much greater. So, this is how he explains, reveals to us what that perfection is. And this perfection, if it has to manifest here, finding that perfection is okay, but it has to manifest here, then we have to understand the entire apparatus through which it has to manifest. We must understand the instrumental nature. We must understand how the mind operates so that the mind can open, become wide, plastic for the divine to manifest. We must understand how the heart is distorted by the psychic prana. Psychic prana here is used in a very specific sense. The soul of desire. I feel love for that person. Well, good, nothing wrong with that. But don't take, all these feelings must recover their deeper truth. True soul of love, and not the surface agitation that comes with it. So he speaks about the instruments of the spirit, which is essentially, we have spoken about it, chitta or the subconscious, then The mind is the inner instrument. So there is the body, there is the heart, there is the life energy, and there is the mind. Mind is the inner instrument, antahkaran. So that itself has these four elements. There is the chitta, there is the manas. Chitta is the subconscious impressions. Manas is, of course, the sense mind. Then there is buddhi and there is ahankar. So all these have to be purified, and ahankar, of course, purified ahankar is like the outer shell which bursts open and the true psychic individuality emerges. So there is this long process of purification, but the thing that Sri Aurobindo emphasizes is on purification of the buddhi, intelligent will, because this is the highest in human beings. It is creation of nature. Yet you take the highest linchpin to move the whole thing. So which is the highest right now in human beings is buddhi. But buddhi can have a lower movement, impurified, where it just justifies everything that the vital desire is doing. Always somebody else is wrong, always something else is complain and grumble. Or it can have a higher movement where it turns towards a higher light. So purification of buddhi is important, and then he puts this wonderful chapter, the liberation of the spirit and liberation of the nature. So nature also is not necessary. Liberation of spirit, we know, freedom from ego, ignorance, desire, and the gunas. This liberation of the soul. But what is liberation of nature? Nature in the three gunas operates in a lesser movement. But it can also be lifted to its Godhead. That's what we see in Savitri, the triple soul Purusha, where each aspect is lifted to, Satyagun is lifted to the soul of knowledge. Rajagun is lifted to the soul of courage and the soul of love. And Tamogun is lifted to the soul of endurance and peace that exists in everything. So it has to be also upgraded. And finally, all of this has to become a beautiful bouquet around a garland around the Divine Mothers, all these powers of nature. So liberation of the nature. But for that, nature has to be freed from the lower elements. And again, they are the same things which we have spoken about. And the emphasis here mainly is on equality. Again and again in the yoga of divine works and in yoga of self-perfection, Sri Aurobindo emphasizes if there is one watchword, it's equality and all its aspect. Endurance is a form of equality. Submission to the divine will is one practice of equality. So, to ignore what needs to be ignored, most of it, stepping back, all this is part of equality. In the yoga of nature, to learn of knowledge, to learn to step back from the whirl of nature. All this leads to the growth of equality. So, equality means it cuts the knot of ego and desire, and especially dualities. Otherwise, the mind is ever playing between pleasure and pain, good and bad, and it's ever confused. It thinks it is very smart. It has made a smart choice to choose success over failure. But God sometimes upsets the plan because He is wiser. Heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayer. Blessed, O misfortune, blessed art thou, for you have shown me the face of my beloved. So then a deeper truth begins to emerge, that behind the duality there is something else. It is the same smile. The Krishna of Vrindavan and the Krishna of Kurukshetra are not two. They are one. The day we realize that, then we are freed. But for that, equality is important. So when Arjuna is moved by a human emotion on the battlefield, he is deviating from equality. And had he followed that trail, he may have been regarded by all his Tauji and all the grand sires. See, he is the one, Honahar. He is the fellow. See, we told Arjuna is the best. See, what a wonderful human being he is. Had he renounced and walked into the forest, he may have become another Tirthankar or somebody, who has renounced. But here, to fulfill God in life is man's manhood. Arjuna would have missed the Gita, missed the Vishwarup, missed God's meaning in him and God's purpose in the world. Therefore, Arjuna must fight. Therefore, Satyavan dies and Savitri chases him in the lyre of death. So, we have here equality. As I said, 3 chapters: the perfection of equality, the way of equality, the action of equality. When we are in that state of equality, then only the true action begins to emerge. Because we are not moved or deviated either by the sting of desire or the preferences of our emotional being or the mind's opinions. So equality is emphasized. Then of course he speaks about power of the instrument. Right now our body and mind and heart work at a very not only suboptimal, way below even their present capacities. Partly because we just want roti kapda makan. So all those people who put human beings on this trail of roti kapda makan are doing the grossest injustice to humanity. Because it means man will never ascend for something greater. When he has roti kapda makan, incidentally, that's see communism and capitalism, how they operate. Then he wants more roti, more kapda, more makan. And when he has more roti, more kapda, more makan. Sorry, roti is bread. Christ told man does not live by bread alone. Kapda is dress and makan is house. When he has these 3, then he says, but I want even my neighbor's kapda, clothes. I want that car which he has. I want that house which Ambani owns. There is no limit to man's greed and ambition. So what are we really doing? And man moves in a futile circle. And you see, that's how it happens. If you really look at it. So they balance each other. Reactionary. Where it's like the sannyasi who suddenly goes into life. That's why they try to be a little away. There's this lovely story people must have heard of Buddha and what is her name? Amrapali. It's immortalized in one of the... So, heard about this story? I don't know how many have heard. So, Amrapali is a Nagarvadhu. She's a Vaishya, a prostitute, so to say. And one of Buddha's disciples spends time with her, start living with her. So, all the people say, oh my God, he's such a horrible person. Don't you know? He said, no, just wait, I trust him, I know him. Are sir, you don't know, he is now even eating food there. All the 3 meals. So Buddha smiles, says, will you keep quiet? You think about your business. Why are you, interfering in my disciples? It's my job. After 6 months, the disciple comes back and says, Master, I have come to you, but I have brought along with me Amrapali. She has realized that all these worldly things in which she was engaged is not the goal of life. She also wants enlightenment. Will you be kind enough to give her enlightenment? And Amrapali becomes a disciple of Buddha. What a marvelous story. So, it's a different path altogether. So this is how, because when he was with her, she learned meditation rather than he degrading and degenerating. So this is where we have, when the divine works, he works in ways that our human consciousness cannot understand. So there also Sri Aurobindo speaks about now the passage. It's a stairway climb. It's not like from here I just leap. So there is the passage which has been created by the divine, the 4-fold personality of the soul, through which through rebirth we climb. And then finally we are ready for the action of the divine Shakti. And then comes this wonderful, it's not the closing chapter, but the practice part, faith and Shakti. 2 things that is one has to remember. Like Sri Aurobindo said to Niruddha, after all this background, at the end, take home point. He says, all that you need to know is that there is a soul within and there is grace above. He says, sir, are you sure? He says, yes. And then he says, if faith is there, it is enough to carry you. And even he goes on to say, even initially faith will not be all the time present. He says, even a hesitating faith, but a blind faith. People will say, this is, how can you are saying you have turned to the divine, this, whatever. No, I just have faith. Blind faith. Even that is better than the doubting intellect. And then he even goes on to say, even a hesitating faith, swalpamasya dharmasya, will carry you through. Because faith is the key given to us to open the door. Many have gone, those who have gone this way, have opened the door to with the key of faith. That's why Sri Aurobindo reminds us, the Gita says, Shraddha Van Labhate. Shraddha Maya Purusho. That man is his faith. You want to know what a person is? Ask what he really has faith in. That is his worth. And those who have faith, they realize. This is the word of the Gita. And we know Sri Aurobindo is Sri Krishna returns. Sambhavami yuge yuge. He says the same thing. He says, if you have faith in the divine Shakti, there is nothing impossible. That the same thing he says in the yoga of divine love, same thing ends up here. That those who have faith will go through, regardless of the dark nights. Even Vedic rishis went through months of night, which they speak of the dark nights. But if you have faith, you will eventually go through. Faith does not necessarily make things easier, but faith makes it easier to walk through the difficult things. So that is the beauty, and those who have faith, they arrive. This is what at the end Sri Aurobindo reveals to us, and it closes with that grand disclosure of the Divine Mother in her fourfold aspect which we read last time. So the synthesis of yoga doesn't stop there. There are few more chapters. Chapter 26, and Faith and Shakti is chapter 18. So there are some 8 more chapters, but they all deal with the experience of what supermind is, nature of the supermind, the intuitive mind, the gradations of the supermind, the supramental thought and knowledge, the supramental instruments, how when the mind is changed into its supramental substance, the supramental sense, even the senses undergo transmutation towards the supramental time vision and the supramental time consciousness. And then he didn't write more, and people say this is incomplete. Well, I think he went beyond what was needed, because all these later chapters are there in the Life Divine in great detail. But here also he mentioned it, but obviously let us reach that point where at least we open to the intuitive mind, and the rest of it will come automatically anyways. So this is how, this is a wonderful book, one of the scriptures given to man by Sri Aurobindo for those who want to understand the principles behind the practice of yoga. And there are many things which are directly related to the practice. And of course, this is the foundation for those who want to understand what is perfection, what really equality means, how to establish peace within us, which is the foundation, or those who want even what is Brahman, so what is supermind, that is there here. But primarily the focus is on the path, the journey, and the great goal. Thank you. Namaste.